Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and this is dedicated to all those spirits out there who believe life is meant to be magical and fun. Here we venture to share the very mysteries of self and reality. My purpose is to help light that spark inside of you, to reawaken your sense of fascination and awe towards the world. I'm going to try to help you hack reality and unleash your potential and open unlimited possibilities of wealth, health, and relationships in your life. So I'm so excited we have Anjani Siegrist. Anjani is, if you can find her on Instagram under Venus Gemstone. She's a writer. She wrote a wonderful book, The Alchemy of Intimacy. And we're going to, you can check out a previous episode that should be coming out by the time you're hearing this. And it's going to be a review of this book. And it's a wonderful book. I've learned a lot from it. And I've kind of known Anjani for a little while, and we've talked back and forth, and it's a real chance for me to talk to her now. Just to give you a little bit of background, Anjani, am I pronouncing that when I say Anjani?
Well, I'm pronouncing Anjani.
Anjani, okay, please forgive me, I'm sorry, all right. Anjani, and then Siegrist?
Siegrist,
All right, and she's been practicing the healing arts for over 17 years. She had an honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy and completed her bachelor's degree, 1,000 hours of bodywork training, and moved to Asia for 2 years, where she studied with masters in Reiki, Ayurveda, yoga, and Thai massage. But if you follow her YouTube channel, there's a lot more than that. She's very passionate. She's, bearing her heart in some of the stuff that she's talking about, and she is an expert on Ayurvedic and all of the different aspects of that, and it's something I don't have very much knowledge of, and I really want to learn. And the people that are watching this episode, I want them to get an idea of this too. So, welcome. So awesome to get a chance to talk to you today. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm curious to find out what kind of questions you're going to ask me.
We want, our goal is to learn, and we want to learn more about you. There's a lot of really great people putting out great content on YouTube, on social media, and a lot of times we only see the just those little initial images, and we hear some of but sometimes it's fun to go deep, especially with all the knowledge that you have. That's sharing all that. I would say for the Reality Revolution, Anjani is our expert on energy. If you want to talk about anything else, she's very, very good at energy. She can talk about gems and crystals, and goes deep on complex relations with energy and the way that these things interact. And some of this stuff is so complicated. I've tried to go over energy in general, but it's really good to talk to an expert. So tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got to this point.
Okay, so my journey and how I got to this point. So as a little kid, I think I've always just been really tuned in to vibrational patterns. So not really so much with people, like people in bodies that are alive.
Right.
And part of that, I think, is because being sensitive, being psychically sensitive, makes a very noisy experience. And even if you're in a room with a family, or where I'm going right now in my mind is like childhood setting. It's like nobody has to be speaking at all, and it's very noisy. And so that led me to studying and wanting to understand. Some of my very earliest memories that I have are of hearing things that are not audible, and experiences with imaginary friends. And I had this whole community of little fairies that accompanied me through a lot of my childhood, that were, I remember them being in my pockets and sleeping next to me near my pillow and underneath my pillow. And and so all of those experiences are really what led me from early ages. I remember as like 10 years old, remembering this moment of like knowing that the only thing that mattered was having a beautiful soul, like making my my soul and the invisible parts of me something that would be infinite and ongoing and an everlasting part.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was brought up with religion. We went to Catholic church, we went to a Baptist church, and I was always asking those really hard questions to the grown-ups and the priests and the, and the answers that I got were okay, but I was always thirsty and curious. So I've been studying religion and all sorts of, I had a year of witchcraft and a couple of years of studying shamanism, and my current thing I've been studying for probably the last 6 years in depth is Tantra yoga philosophy. And I'm just now starting to get into, after 6 years of studying philosophy, I'm just now getting into the physicality of it. And I've been working with bodywork, and so I've been touching bodies and being touched since 2007.
Wow.
But this piece of Tantra, I'm just making that emphasis of like, it's there, when I say Tantra yoga, Tantrika, I know people automatically
like, right.
Ew, what are you doing?
Tell us what it should mean. You say in the book that it's harnessing energy and prana and that kind of thing, right? Is that basically it, or more than that?
So I feel like it's just like astrology and Ayurveda and everything else. It's like my concept of it from, and I'm a big study person. Like I can see in your background there, like,
oh yeah.
I love to research and study and get as much of that intellectual information that I can. And at this point, my current understanding of Tantra is that we're bringing together a polarity of energy within our body, and you can just call it masculine, feminine, Shiva, Shakti. And I'm putting my hands in this direction because there's like this upper and lower, and we're bringing those two together in the body. And using that, there's all these different ways you can use that. So sexuality, I think, is a pathway of merging those, but I feel like it can get tricky and a little bit messy because where I am right now currently is harnessing those two, masculine, feminine, by myself, with myself. Right.
And you talk about that in the book, and that's for the people that see the title of the book, Alchemy of Intimacy, and it's the Love and Sexuality Workbook. It is a lot more than about love and sexuality. And as I talk about in the review, you're going beyond. You're talking about falling in love with your physical matter and your spiritual essence, which is, and it's a spiritual journey. This book is not the beginning of it. It's really a guide. It's 13 weeks, and it's really a guide to getting used to these energies that you're talking about right now. We all have the feminine and masculine energy in us. And when we have an imbalance, which happens all the time, a lot of for instance, my meditations are very masculine. I can't, but there's the feminine energy that we also need to balance. Now, we sometimes, maybe we make a mistake by calling it feminine and masculine. It's just an energy, right? Yin and yang, right? And so when we say feminine, we instantly pull you into an archetype or whatever that is, and it becomes different than what it what it truly is, right? So it's interesting when we go to the end, you really start to talk about what you had happen in your life in the end of the book, and there's a passage. First of all, the writing is great. Some of the stuff in here is straight poetry, the brain orgasm, dripping dopamine all over my philosophical matters. But you say in here, when you're talking about forgiveness and men, you say, I've been molested, shot at, beaten, thrown out of a moving vehicle, cheated on, and raped by men. In my pain and agony over these events, I see the pain and agony of the ones who acted out their rage and feelings of hopelessness. This sounds like the real spiritual understanding that you came to, because you had to overcome these things in your life. It would be easy for somebody to have experienced all those things to just wallow in your past and let it destroy you. And it sounds like you overcame it and understood it beyond just overcoming it yourself. there's this level of forgiveness that I wanted to talk about a little bit.
So I think about these things like when I hear the word overcome, I feel like there's something in me that's like, it's not an overcoming. It feels more
maybe
like,
that's the wrong word.
Well, I don't think it's the wrong word. I think it's just like in me, I feel like it's a becoming. It's a becoming.
Right.
Yes. It's like I with material like this, like heavy material that a lot of people have experienced, and I think that we want to overcome it. And in me, I feel this becoming it, like letting it become part of our embodied experience. And so these things, it's like I don't feel hatred or anger or sadness. Even I don't feel to cry anymore about these things. And I couldn't even watch that on TV.
Right.
And I was married for a while. My husband used to love watching like these really violent. If I would see men getting, it just would kill me. And I would get so triggered and have an anxiety attack, and it would mess me up for like a week. I just couldn't. But I think because I was trying to shove it back down or overcome it. And somehow, I think just through all these different practices, and I traveled the world and was looking for healing. And
were you holding some of this in your body? Was that part of the body journey you went on? Or you were holding some of
Definitely. I also extra weight on my body that I couldn't lose it for I would do all these crazy things. I woke up every morning and worked out, and I think that it was in my tissue.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So I've come to the point where I know that I hold stuff in my body, and I know I'm aware of it. But releasing it isn't just as easy as saying, okay, I'm going to release it, is it? There sometimes it stays in there, even when you know it's there. What if you have a client come to you and you know they're holding an emotion in their body? I really want, there's a book called The Emotion Code, and there's several books that are really good that talk about using magnets sometimes. In correspondence with the body. Some people have used certain yoga. What would you recommend? Somebody knows they're holding anger in their liver or fear in their kidneys, and you want to help them release it. What would you do?
So what I used to do when I used to want to release things, there is an actual technique that I would do it on myself repeatedly, multiple times a day. And when someone was laying on the table, I would have my hands under their spine, and I would have them imagine a big golden sun going over their body like a magnet. There's a breathing technique that always, before starting any session, that I would have the person on their inhale, imagine scooping their breath downward into their pelvis. And then on the exhale, bringing that pelvic breath back up. And so that they're cycling breath through their body and getting really aware of that. And then imagine that sun going over and just sort of pulling up, like with its magnetic force, pulling up anything that. But see, this is the thing about, I don't do that anymore because I don't do that.
I was wondering, can I build that into a meditation? Because, that might work, but yeah.
It's a good meditation. It's something that I used it a lot. But I mean, I use it every day, and I use it in healing sessions with people. But what my experience has been is that that's my mind saying, I don't like this thing. I want to get rid of it. And, I have anger in my liver, and it's giving me these spots. I have fear in my kidneys, and my heart has this heat, and my pericard, you know what I mean? All of it's like, okay, well, how about asking the liver what's going on? Asking the liver what is, you know what I mean? Like getting in touch, even holding your liver, connecting with it and asking it, why is that there? And is there anything you want to tell me? How can I serve you? Stuff like that.
I've tried to get in the process of loving loving my liver, but I haven't thought about communicating with it. And why not? That's a great idea. I like that idea. That's great. So before we go in, we're going to keep on talking about this, but I just want to get to know you a little bit better. What is your favorite fiction book that you've ever read?
So I actually, it was the Charlotte's Web, Charlotte's Web. That's probably last fiction book I read until
No, that's wonderful, wonderful. I love it.
Charlotte's Web. I actually really like The Alchemist too. I don't know if that's a fiction
So
book.
you are now the second out of 3 interviews that picked The Alchemist. That's wonderful. So it is now the top book so far in the reality revolution. And so I'm a big movie buff, and I always like to ask everybody I meet, tell me a movie I probably haven't seen that you'd totally recommend.
Have you seen the movie What Dreams May Come by
yes, with Robin Williams. Oh my God. With Robin Williams?
Yeah, have you seen it?
Oh yes, written by Richard Matheson. It's beautiful and wonderful, and it's one of my favorite Robin Williams movies for sure. And it was at the time when it came out, everybody was like, "What is this? This is so crazy!" But it's the ultimate journey to go into hell. Robin Williams, the character, goes into hell to save his love, and it's wonderful. So yes, very much awesome choice, great choice, and I like to collect morning routines, especially with people that are attuned like you to your energy, and you sometimes you can't help but have some kind of ritual. What kind of morning routine do you have? As much detail or description as you can give me.
Okay, so first thing in the morning, I have all my equipment here to write down my dreams. Even if if it leaves me, I have this whole thing that I do, like dream architecture. I am so seriously committed and dedicated to my dream life.
Oh, wow. So are you a lucid dreamer? You lucid dream?
I had a phase of being very crazy about lucid dreaming, like noting what I would eat at night and taking B12 and having chocolate before bed. I don't try to do that anymore because what happens, I feel like it's my ego. Like it's my top of my head, my programmed self who wants to take control of a situation. Whereas if I just let what arises, like a flower blooming from the soil, and let that unfold as it naturally does, and then just let it be my job to be in courtship with that.
So you start with the dream. Go ahead, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt that. So good.
So then I just take notes on whatever I perceived from my sleep experience. I get up and put oil in my mouth right away and do oil pulling. I make some lemon, ginger, honey tea. I do dry brushing while the water's boiling. When I'm done dry brushing, spit the oil out, brush my teeth, have my honey, lemon, ginger, and go for a run.
Honey, lemon, ginger, hot or cold? Honey, lemon, ginger, hot?
Pretty warm.
Okay. And so that's so you have 20 minutes, and then you run. You come back from your run. Mm-hmm. What time do you usually wake up?
Usually about 5:30 or 6.
5:30. And you go to bed around 11?
Depends.
You get the full 8 hours?
You know what? I was for years not dating. And then I would go to bed around 9, and I used to wake up at 4. And I had a whole different routine, but I'm kind of changing that a little bit because I have been dating and going on dates and stuff. It kind of changes that whole thing. So
one of the first spiritual awakenings that I had was waking up at 4 and just going for a walk. Something about that time at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's very powerful. Mm-hmm. So you get back from the run, and it's already it's probably even 6 o'clock, and then do you do any meditation in the morning?
So this is what I like to do. I like to run really fast and hard until all my muscles are like firing off. And breathing hard and the twitching happens in the muscles in my leg muscles, and then I'll sit down for meditation. And when everything is just pulsing hard and fast, and then I'll just sit, feel all that energy moving in my body, and it's so I don't do drugs, what I mean? But
you don't need to.
It's so fascinating, and there's so much activity happening that all I can do is completely be still and just witness what's happening in my body.
I think there's something to having an elevated exercise activity before the meditation, and you kind of reinforce that a little bit. So that's great. So when you meditate, do you meditate for 20 minutes, an hour, 3 hours? What's your standard average? I mean, it's maybe, of course, it's not the same every time, but on average.
Oh, so I'll go through phases of actually sitting for a meditation. I have a meditation muse. Have you seen those or heard of them? It's that
The
little
muse.
headband.
I have the headset right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that you listen to the sound that you mean, is this like this one?
Yes.
So you listen to the sound of the thunderstorm or the birds chirping, and it tunes in your brainwave. Awesome. You know, that is, I've always wanted to have that neurofeedback to what my brain, because you can kind of tell, but sometimes when you do that, it's a lot more, and it gives you more control. Right? Awesome. So then, 20, 30 minutes, or I think the thing on that's like 20 minutes, right? So 20 minutes.
I have mine set to 24 minutes.
24 minutes, right. 1 minute per, no, I've heard the 24 minutes a lot, and that 1 minute per hour of the day. And that seems to, I hear people argue, that's not enough. And I think it's organic and different for everybody, and it's an ongoing thing for the correct amount of time that we should meditate. Right.
Well, also, I'm in bodywork sessions for a lot of hours a day, which to me is very, very meditative.
And right.
The thing is, like, as long as I'm getting out of my chatter, and it's a goal of mine to do that as much. I make tea. I mash up the cacao.
Right.
And make like cacao at least twice a day. And I feel like a lot of the things are meditative. So I'm able to witness what's happening in my mind instead of it being just like a TV show. I don't leave things running, music or TV, anything like that in the background. So I'm witnessing what's happening inside of my mind most of the day.
So I want to talk about astrology a little bit. Now, talk to me as the cynic, the doubter, the scientist that looks at this and thinks, well, I agree that I can create my reality, but I'm worried about the feedback loop that would occur when you have advanced certain kind of knowledge about astrology. I know that Mercury's in retrograde, so I'm going to have a problem with my technology, so the technology starts breaking. And am I doing that myself because I'm expecting it to, because I'm aware of that? I understand that aspect of it. I also know that if it's 130 degrees outside, I don't want to go outside because it's hot. And I like to be warned about things like that. So for the longest time, I thought there was just there's easy correlations that are reached for that are not accurate. And I read this book by Lynn McTaggart about the intention experiment, and they did studies where they looked at people that created intentions, and they could see the effectiveness of these intentions, thoughts being communicated to people, manifestations happening when there were certain solar storms and different energies. And so it started me thinking, maybe there is obviously an aspect to these energies that are in the universe, and we've tried to define them a little bit, and sometimes we get caught up in these definitions. But the interesting thing about Ayurvedic is, compared to it's very specific to the time that you were born, to the day that you were born, to the year that you were born, to what the sun and the stars were like in the sky, right? Am I right? So there's a lot more specificity to it that is detailed over a very long period of trial and error, and there is something to it. And I know nothing about it, and I don't want to be the one that instantly says that's BS. So answer the cynic and explain a little bit about what's going on and why how it works. And am I creating a reality by knowing this information? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand.
Okay.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Right. Okay.
First thing I wanted to do is recommend a book by somebody named Percy Seymour.
Uh-huh.
He has two really good books. One of them is called Cosmic Magnetism. The other one is called Astrology, The Proof of Science.
Okay.
And he's a scientist, and his work is just amazing. So I want to just recommend that.
Percy Seymour, Cosmic Magnetism, and the work of science. Astrology, the work of science.
The proof
of science. Got it. Okay, close. I got it. I'm working on it. Okay.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to my mind for the cynic is that you have a birthday, and
Right.
that the day that you were born is a marker for the day the sun reaches its same position it was in the sky.
Right.
So if you like, I'm born on March 8th, so in 1 year it's going to be March 8th again, and basically that's the sun had went around,
Right.
and it's back to that same position it was in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the moon does that every month. It's going to be to its same position it was in the sky. Saturn is going to do that in 28 years, be back to that same position it was in the sky. Venus is going to do it every 8 years. Every planet is going to do that same thing that the sun does. But we, in astrology, have only focused on the sun. We just think, oh, I'm a Pisces because the sun was in Pisces.
Right.
But they're not looking at all those other planets. Where were those other planets? What were those planets' relationships to each other, which you'll read about in that book, Cosmic Magnetism, because it tells about the magnetic pull between the sun and the earth and these different planets. Within our body, each one of those planets, so this is where the Ayurveda astrology, or they call it Vedic astrology, it all fits together with Ayurvedic medicine. Each one of those planets represents a different organ in our body. And in our body, that organ is going to be at a different tension with an organ that's a polar opposite. So it's exactly the same. It's like we're literally an imprint of the sky within our physical body.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. What I'd really like to know, which would maybe give us more information, imagine where Jupiter is right now in space. Yeah. If there's a way for us to know if Jupiter's over here now, but it was here, and the Earth goes through where Jupiter was. Do you understand what I'm saying? That space that Jupiter occupied, or any planet that it occupied before, if the Earth goes through that, that's going to affect everything. Imagine all the remnants of that planet and all the energies in it. I don't know how we would know that, because we'd have to know an actual location in space. But someday, I think that's another way of analyzing these energies. So now, explain to me the first time that you really saw the power of astrology, that you were like, wow, there's something to this, that there was an aha moment behind it, was there?
So I've been studying astrology ever since I could read.
Oh, okay.
It's been something that I've been just completely interested in.
Right.
And especially when my friend's mom threw my astrology book out the window and said, "This is the devil's work," when I was 16.
Then you're like, that's for sure now, right?
Yeah, right. I was so much more interested in it. An aha moment that I had with astrology was when I joined the school that I study with the most, which is the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. I had a reading by the founder of the school, and I had an aha moment when she was explaining to me about my inner masculine. She was explaining to the T the type of men that I am always attracted to, and she told me, she doesn't know me, I've never spoke to her in my life, and she told me the problems I come up with, the kind of men I end up with, the codependency rituals that I was doing. She listed it all out. And I'm just like, what the actual F?
Right. I get it. Yeah.
So that was a moment that I'm like, okay, there is something to this. And I went so far into understanding my inner masculine, how it shows up in the outer world, and my attraction to males. And there's a lot about that in that book too, because that to me saved my relationship stuff.
Right. Wow. Awesome. So, and I wanted to ask this with everybody. Do you have a supernatural moment that you had in your life that was so amazing? Can you share it? Do you have a moment like that it was clearly supernatural to you? There was no doubt in your mind.
Wow. So that's interesting, because I feel like my whole life is a supernatural moment.
What a perfect answer. That's kind of how I would answer it. Yeah.
Dreams, dead
The
people,
fairies.
fairies,
Right.
childbirth, walking through that portal of childbirth where it's like moments that I felt like I died, but
Right.
I'm still here. And then it's like, but in that moment, everything changed. And although I felt like I died and I can still see and I'm still here, everything looks different. Everything tastes different and smells different. And I'm like, where did that other reality go?
Right.
Right.
I get it. So one of the most popular subjects in the reality revolution, and the last few people that I've interviewed, Sunny Sharma and Quasi, we're talking about something called reality transurfing. So I want to talk to somebody. Have you had a chance to read that book, or do you know anything about it? Reality.
No.
Perfect. So that's good. I want to talk to somebody that doesn't know, because you've already dealt with this stuff on an advanced level. He talks about an energy cord that starts on the back of the head, and that reality is like a projector coming from behind us, and we can awaken this energy center, an intention center on our. So I was trying to, okay, there's clearly, this has to have been mentioned. He refers to it almost like a phantom limb. It's different for everybody, and it can go all the way back. It's almost a cord of energy. So our resident energy expert, who has not read this, so she's not biased by it, is this something that is real? Can you tell me a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is not a new thing. And so tell me more about your perspective of that.
Okay, so in bodywork, when I tuck my hands underneath, it's right about here.
Right, okay.
So C7, I'll say about C7.
Okay.
In Chinese medicine, they call it the Windgate.
The Windgate.
There's sometimes the way I experience that on people is that this is where they get information from their guides, and I'll see their guides. Sometimes I'll see, oh, it's this particular angel, or it feels like this, it looks like this. So
Okay.
there's
So I've got this sense that maybe if you had a guide, or your guide, for people that don't believe, they would probably be standing right there watching what's coming in the projector, right? Or the energy. That's where they would be located physically. They would be wanting to watch what's about to come into your reality, because we're experiencing this, but our guide is kind of there ahead of time, watching over, just making. Does that make? Anyway, it's a random thought.
That's the funny thing that you mentioned there, ahead of time, because I feel like there is no real concept of time when we start looking at energy and the chakra system in our body, that it's in our body, but it's part of this interdimensional experience that is timeless. And that specific spot on our body, I feel like is, sometimes I feel like it is that place where we connect above and below, and
not necessarily the chakra or the heart, but back there. It's more than now. They will try to activate it, as I've read, with headstands or postures where the blood is flowing downward, right? So if I get on my rack and my gravity boots, it's kind of similar, right? That's what am I on to something with that you can activate? Okay. So
shoulder stand is my favorite way, because you're putting pressure directly on it, and you're closing off on the front of that. So if you're running a pole right through your body, when you're in the shoulder stand, your chin is locking down in the front, and your back is pushing down into the floor. So then when you get out of the posture, all this fresh blood flow goes to that area.
Okay. All right. So for people that are watching this channel, the idea of the plait, which is what they call it, the plait is what they're referring to, is is a real thing that's been studied longer than just this, and there's more to it, and the more I become tuned into it, I think there's something there. So we talk a lot, and I'll talk to you about it. We always use the word chakra, energy center, and sometimes it's bandied about with very little knowledge. People throw kundalini out. What are the things that frustrate you? Can you give us an explanation for people of what you want to better understand these concepts?
Yes, I would love that. Okay, so two of my Tantra teachers have been studying and uncovering a lot of the history of the chakras. And we have as our main text one person's translation. And from his translation, Arthur Avalon, he wrote The Serpent Power. Then there was, another lady, I already forgot her name by now, but she was the one, she has so many books about the chakras. Right. But her translation is coming from Arthur Avalon. And then everybody after her, I don't know why her name is completely skipped from my mind right now, but she's the expert. And everybody after her, this is where we're getting it from. Okay. And there's so many mistakes in his translation. And not only that, there's so many things that were left out. Kundalini is never asleep. How can...
You're not awakening.
That is the Shakti, the goddess, the vitality that enlivens our body. There's no way that it can be asleep. Does it rest at the base of the spine? I don't know. I think that it's in every single cell of our body, that it's a coil that is always constantly...
But it's a specific energy that a lot of times can be rested lower in our bodies, right? And sometimes we have to go through a process of pulling this energy up, at least in my experience. Or am I misinterpreting the energy?
Well, I think that if it's your experiential... something that you've experienced in your body. In my body, I've experienced in fingers, and I'll have to shake it because I feel like it's So to me, I don't feel like I think about the ocean a lot of times when I think about my body and energy in my body.
That's
and
okay.
Waves that are constantly the waves are constantly moving and flowing, and the whole ocean is a big continuous flow of movement. There's not one place that it's more condensed or cooled,
See, sometimes the experience I'm having, you just don't know. You think maybe that's what I'm having, but there's that, you're just having your own experience of your body. For instance, Dr. Joe Dispenza has a breathing exercise, and I use it in my meditations, where you tighten your floor, your perineum, your lower abdomen, and you pull the energy by breath. And so what I'll do in the meditations is I'll do like a breath of fire first, and then do the breath exercise where you're pulling and tightening your muscles. That's a yoga breathing pranayama technique, right? That's where he's getting that. Right? Yeah. And you pull it up to the top of your head by focusing your energy on it. And there is something I do notice that, at least when I do it in meditations, it can be very powerful. Is there historical background for that?
Absolutely. Yes. So I lived in India for 2 years, and part of what, and it was a Vedanta ashram. So a lot of it is, to me, the Vedanta way is more masculine based, and it is more grounded, focused on controlling the ego and, all this kind of stuff. But there's an actual technique when you're sitting in lotus posture that you would have your heel placed in your perineum, and that when you would inhale, you're basically bringing all of your awareness to the perineum and holding the inhale, and then there's all these different bandhas you can lock, and so you're concentrating energy in a particular spot, and then when you let that inhale move, that energy would also move. And I think what happens a lot in the Vedanta teachings, which is where we primarily get all of the yoga studios are taking their textbooks from Vedanta, and they're concentrating on bringing it up and out, up and out. And so they're coming this way, and a lot of them forget to also
go back down.
Go back down. There's a lot of people that I've seen kind of blow their circuits and just get totally disembodied.
Oh wow. There's the constant two energy stream that we have, and you're right. It's interesting. I'll read Hebrew text, and they're doing the middle pillar, and they're pulling energy down, and then I hear others that are pulling the energy up, and the combination. It seems like that's where it's at, but you don't see a lot of that in different schools. So what was tell me about India? I bet that was so transformational to be there for 2 years. How awesome is that? I'm so jealous.
my favorite thing from there was the goddess temple. Every night there would be a ceremony. We did ceremonies and rituals all the time, all day, for everything. And that's something that I've really brought back into my Western life. The thing I told you in the morning, it's short, but it's a ritual to me that keeps me grounded in reality. And then in the ashram in India, first thing in the morning, you would hear prayers being over a loudspeaker in the it's like a song. The prayers would come out like a song. It was beautiful. And then in the evening, we would have these little flames, like a what do you say? Light. But it's not a candle. It was like an oil lamp.
Right.
And we would throw flowers as we were repeating the names of the goddess, we would throw flowers into the fire. Wow. That is representing our own action of taking from our heart something that we're putting into the fire, which is our own light, our own fire of awareness. And as we're saying the names of the goddess, we just keep doing that for like an hour every single night.
Oh my God. Wow. For an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's amazing. I bet you could just talk about that forever, the whole experience. So were you pretty deeply into, how far were you before you decided to do this? Were you just like a beginner in Vedanta, or were you kind of advanced and they took you to the next level? I mean, 2 years is a long time. And so where were you?
No, I just actually had just recently gotten out of the Navy when I went to India. So I studied a lot. I had been reading a lot of things. And when I got there, I felt like I intellectually knew a lot of things, but my intellect is sometimes a hindrance to actually knowing.
I get that all the time. Yes, for sure. Yeah. It's easy to read about it, but to experience it is completely different. Right. So you had your website, you offer some different courses, and you do readings, and it's integrative bodywork, the exact link. Let me make sure I have it. Integratedbodywork, right? .com?
My name, AnjaniSiegrist.com.
Okay. AnjaniSiegrist.com. Let me see. I know there's so many other things I wanted to talk about after going through this. So many different things. So how do guys bring in that feminine energy? What do we do? What would you recommend? Because it's first of all, it's not important. They may not think it's important, but when you read the book, the balancing of this energy gives you power. That's the thing I'm trying to say, is that it is worth it for us to read these kind of books, as I say in my review, because we need this perspective. When I've tried to talk about love and relationships and intimacy and those kind of things, we think it's going to be about one thing. It's not. So the thing I really pulled out of that is this other energy, and maybe I need to learn more about how to bring this energy into my masculine side. I got the masculine, of course, that's natural. What do I need to do to balance that with the feminine energy? Is it about what side of my brain is? Is it more than that? Because I work with left or right brain, and I'll do exercises like right with my left hand to get that working, and sometimes I get association. I've done nostril breathing, and I've worked on both sides of my brain, but there's more to it. Am I right?
What I would say is to stop all of that.
Stop all. Well, I do that stuff anyway. Right.
Just for not forever. I mean, just when you want to integrate your feminine essence.
Right.
I would say that all those things. Remember when I just said that my intellect gets in the way?
Right.
So the feminine essence is the experience of being in your body. So as I'm walking down the street and I'm feeling like, oh, there's that little flesh as I move, and my hip hits that flesh, and this experience of being in our physical body. That's the feminine. Right when you started asking me the question, I instantly thought of something that has been on my mind and in my heart about men. And this phrase, they're like, oh, I'm a good lover. I'm so good in bed. And I'm like, instantly, I know you're not when you tell me that. Because there's something that is required to be good in bed, which is that you know that you're not. And so therefore, you're going to look at who you're with and what you're doing and feel the breath as it's moving through your body, and also looking at her like, what can I do with you? Who are you? What does your finger feel like? And having this super fierce commitment to being curious about the person in the moment. And if you know something, you're already messed up, because you have to know that you don't know in order to fully experience the moment. And anytime a thought comes in my mind, just now I was doing a massage before we got on this interview, and I'll find myself like, ooh, this is cool. This is a good technique. And I remember this technique. And I have to set that back and see what is called for in this moment. What is this person teach you asking for? So that's the part where you want to get more into your feminine essence. It's being curious and going this way, pulling your energy inward this way.
Inward, right. Okay.
If you think about push-pull, the masculine way is to push and to direct and be headstrong, go that way. And to be feminine, you're pulling, you're practicing your allure. And sometimes in practicing allure, you don't know. So you have to be curious and ask a question, even if you're just asking it on the inside and waiting for an answer that might not come in words.
Right. What's your perspective on the way that Tony Robbins will teach couples about the meadow reports? You've heard his perspective on the hunter-gatherer. Do you think there's something to that?
I don't know.
Okay, so the idea is in the old days, the men were the hunters, and they had to go out and they had to achieve a goal. And the women were the gatherers, and they had to know where all the plants were and how far they had grown, and they had to go and have their objects. And then they would meet other women in the meadow, and they would give a report, and they would give as much detail, and they would talk, and say as much as possible. When the men were out hunting, if they started to talk like that, the other men would look at them and they would not trust them anymore. They would know that something's wrong. So when the man would come home and the woman would give the meadow report, the man would still have this something's wrong. He knows that and then she doesn't understand the way he responds, because sometimes women have to give information out and men. And so there's this total, do you understand? I don't know why this came up right now, but it got me to thinking about it. What do you think about that?
Have you read Sex Before Dawn?
I have.
Okay. So that whenever I hear about hunter-gatherer and men and women, my mind instantly goes to like, well, what about times when women were hunting? And what about...
And that's true. It's a simplification, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point. It really probably is. We try to do that with men are from Mars and women are from Venus. We try to simplify it, and it is so complicated. Men and women is much more complicated, and it seems like we're always trying to simplify it, and it's not so simple.
If Tony Robbins were to do that to me and my husband when we were married, it would have completely not worked, because in that marriage, I was the one who never wanted to talk about my feelings. I didn't remember anniversaries. I was just like, let's have sex and cook food and good. And he was like, oh, you just, he always wanted to tell me his feelings and talk. And I'm just like, oh my God. So that's,
So he was giving the meadow reports and you were the hunter, it sounds like.
Yes.
All right. That makes sense. All right. So if I was to do a meditation and I wanted to bring in the feminine and masculine energy, if I did a meditation with that focus, I probably would have to have a female voice, I think. Would you record for a future meditation? Would you record a track?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Yes.
So that you write something and we can integrate it in, and the focus of the meditation will be to integrate our masculine, feminine energies. Super easy. I think we can do it. So just if you have if you can just, we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think, what else have I missed? We've talked about a lot. We've covered the book, which I recommend, Alchemy of Intimacy. We've talked about some of your work. We've talked about chakras. We've talked about the Bindu. We've talked about the kundalini. We've talked about Ayurvedic. What else? Please tell me what else I've missed. We've got everything covered so far. I'm sure we'll have you on again and we'll talk about more. And I promise we will have questions about energy. I notice on your Instagram, and I recommend again, she's got great pictures. And first of all, do you have another book coming out soon after this? Because the end just left everybody going, well, I want to learn more about you. Because you waited till the end of this book to tell your story and about what was going on, some of the struggles that you had. And so you got another one coming soon?
I'm working on 2 more books. One of them is called Sovereign Sexuality, and it's subtitled Taking Ownership of Your Orgasm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that one is exciting. I'm excited about that. Sovereign Sexuality. So, and the other one has to do with daily rituals for integrating all of the different aspects of ourselves. So
I can't wait, and I will definitely be reading those for sure, 100%. That was the question I want to have. Something I need to understand better. Explain the concept of Chiron that you talked about.
Oh,
all right.
Okay, so
just so I can understand that a little bit better. When you're talking about Chiron.
Okay, so this is the wounded healer, the part of, in mythology, Chiron is the wounded healer.
It's a part of our personality, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So everything in the world, especially when we come to mythologies and the stories that are held as an energetic signature through some sort of a mythological story.
Which is why you talk about the hero's journey.
Yes. It's part of our psychology and it's part of our psyche or our soul. So in mythology, Chiron is abandoned at birth. His mother is basically raped and tricked into this long drawn out thing, of course, as all the mythologies are. Is impregnated, gives birth. It's this crazy beast looking child. So she abandons the child and he's picked up and taken to be a student or a foster child, I guess we call it, adopted by Apollo, and trained in all these different arts, the art of war, healing, music, astrology, prophecy, basically everything that is required for us to inhabit our human bodies or to be in the world.
But he's a beast.
And so
at the same
time. He's a beast at the same time. It's hideous looking.
All right.
According to the story.
Right.
But within all of us, there is that aspect that is so something about, I'll use myself, something about myself that I am so afraid of. I'm whatever the material might be, that my whole life I try to cover it up and hide it and stuff it down and keep it, because it's the vulnerable spot, and some of my dreams I'll see the vulnerable spot in the dream character, and I know that the opponent is going straight for that, so we'll put band-aids on those spots in a metaphorical way. And Chiron represents that. So looking through the lens of astrology, we can see where that thing is and who is it related to. Like my Chiron is in relationship to Venus, giving just a brief interpretation that my wound is around intimacy and pleasure and beauty. And it's one of the most challenging things for me to do and to be,
Right. Okay.
So we can hide from it or we can go full on into it.
Okay. And that reminds me another question. So if you watch your account, you have all kinds of cool gemstones and crystals and cool necklaces that you're making. And I think the first time that I talked with you, you had recommended moldavite. And I wear moldavite every day. But I was wondering, what's your most powerful, the most powerful crystal or whatever you want to call it, mineral or rock that you've ever encountered? Tell me a little bit about that. Moldavite, you think so?
Yes, definitely.
Right.
It's definitely not a beginner stone. Like I would
No.
never recommend it to somebody that's that's new because of the moldavite flesh that a lot of people experience. I got it. I got a headache.
Right.
I had to like wean myself onto moldavite because it's
Oh, wow.
really intense.
That's amazing. So I've had several moldavites, and I feel like they all have a connection to me. And I've lost some, like they were meant. I was meant. I had a ring, and it was like when I lost it, it was like I knew that I was not supposed to have that one. It was like it. Do they leave you?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And sometimes they come back. Sometimes they never come back.
Sometimes they were like, not for you. And it's like they choose you also, right?
Yes.
All right. Have you ever found similar power with things like claws or shells or things like that, or is it just things that have crystalline form? Or is there anything that you find power in everything? Right? I guess a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. When I'm out in nature and I'm asking if I'm in my mind thinking something and I see a feather and I'm like, wow, this is the answer to the thing that was through my mind. And I feel like everything has soul, everything has life and power. And it's just in the moment, are we connected? In that moment, are we a match for each other? And is there something that we can do for each other? I always will pick a feather up. And if it's for me to take home, I will. If not, I'll blow it and say thank you.
Right. But your connection is your sensitivity to this energy. I find interesting because you find it. Now, what do you think about orgone energies? When I read about you get the pyramids, the orgone energies, and I've got a few of those. They have they make. And do you think there's something to that?
Yes, I have a few around my house too.
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
there's part of me that thinks maybe, I don't know, right?
I used to be really crazy about crystals and the way that those orgone or orgonite, the way that those are made. Right. I found it really fascinating.
It is fascinating for sure.
And then I'm like, okay, yeah, but also,
but you'll make a meditation mala as well, and that's a necklace that you can use with your meditation. Is that correct? All right, cool, very cool. Well, it's been a super pleasure, and it's been awesome that you've gotten to join us. Thank you so much, and welcome to the Reality Revolution.